Lauri Markkanen's not only making the biggest jump for the Jazz, he may be making the biggest jump in the NBA again. It's next on Locked on Jazz.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider, and this is Locked on Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Today, what players in the NBA could make the jump we talked about for Jazz players, the trick on why it's so hard to project which Jazz player makes the jump. Let's be nice to Walker Kessler, and Eastern Conference points gained. We will actually get to it today. I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. We are free and available on all podcasts, including YouTube. Our YouTube question of the day: what NBA player makes the biggest jump? What NBA player makes the biggest jump? I'll get into it. So in other words, not just Jazz player, right? It seems weird to say NBA player, but I think you guys get the concept. So that is our YouTube question of the day. What NBA player makes the biggest jump for everyone? And then we will get to our Eastern Conference points gained, which I teased yesterday. If you're an everydayer, that Milwaukee does not come out very well. And I'll try to explain why, which is interesting. Talk to some scouts around the league who don't totally disagree with this concept. They all disagree with me that OKC doesn't come out well. I just want to tell you that. Everyone disagrees with me on that. So anyway, that is today. Thank you for all the everydayers. Join us each and every day, Monday through Friday. We greatly appreciate it. Postcasts after regular season games with Ron Boone as well. And thank you for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. All right. Who makes the biggest jump in the NBA? So the Ringer Top 100 just came out. ESPN has their Top 100. And certainly there's probably somebody outside the Top 100 who jumps to 50 who's going to win Most Improved Player. But to me, the jump is what Lauri did last year, where you go from 0 to 50, or you go 0 to 31. Or you go from what Shai Gilgeous-Alexander did last year, which is you go from like 30 to 9. That's like an influential, important jump that exists. So there's two guys that I think are interesting to look at in this, and that's Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell, but they're ranked on the Ringer Top 100, 15 and 16. So if they get to 9, that's pretty awesome. Like if either of them vault into the top 10. And what's interesting about Jamal Murray, he's the one guy who has somebody who makes him better in Nikola Jokic. And this actually gets me to a point as I'll dive back into this, but trust me, this exit is planned here. We're stopping it off this freeway for a second on purpose. This is what I thought made yesterday's conversation so hard, and is maybe a little bit of a weakness of who we are as a team. We don't have anyone on our roster who makes other players better. Now, in my opinion, there's very, very, very few of those. Like, I have generally fundamentally believed that a player is the same player regardless of teammates. And regardless of situations, every year I've done all sorts of research on this, that a player's possession usage of an individual possession and their efficiency of it, it actually doesn't matter that much who their teammates are. They just are who they are and how they use that. There are a very few select players, but 3 or 4, Steph Curry, Nikola Jokic, LeBron in his prime, I don't know if he still is, who do alter the productivity, Chris Paul, in his prime, of players and how they play. The Jazz, we don't have one of those players. So that when we're suddenly looking at Colin Sexton or Taylor Horton-Tucker or Chris Dunn or Lauri Markkanen or Walker Kessler or Ochai Agbaji to break through and have like this burst, they really have to do it on their own. Whereas, like, you look at Aaron Gordon, and he had kind of a burst in Denver because he's playing with Nikola Jokic. Like, Christian Brown's going to look fine as a second-year player out of Kansas because he's playing with Nikola Jokic. Like, I wonder what Indiana's going to get with Bruce Brown when he's not playing with Nikola Jokic. Like, we've seen more and more players. Like, Bam Adebayo might be one of these guys, actually, who makes everyone around him better. I think that's a stretch, but maybe. And so the one thing on us is we just don't actually have players that make other players better yet. That would be why we probably looked for Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday would help that a little, but not a lot. Frankly, there's truly only like 5 guys in the NBA that do this, who that are so good, have so much gravity, change the landscape of the floor, tilt the floor so much that they open up for everybody else. Jamal Murray at 15th in the NBA on the Ringer list, if he jumps to 9, that's a huge, massive jump, and I think he might be able to do it coming off no injury and having Nikola Jokic. Here are the other guys that I've looked at as possibilities of making kind of a massive jump in the NBA, how they're thought of. Anthony Edwards, he's 18th in the NBA on the Ringer list. Does he make top 10? Lauri Markkanen is 31st on the NBA Ringer. I think there's a real chance Lauri Markkanen could be thought of as a top 15 player at the end of the year, and that's a massive jump. Lonzo Ball is ranked 45th in the NBA. He could be a top 15, 20 player in the NBA by the end of the year. And Desmond Bane is ranked 44th. And my eyes tell me no on Desmond Bane, but the numbers say that Desmond Bane's first 25 games without Ja Morant could be mammoth, considering what they were last year before he got the toe injury. And then I'll throw a wild card at you. Franz Wagner in Orlando, to me, is a guy that could make a pretty big jump. He's at 62nd on the list, on the top 100 list by the Ringer. He's at 62nd. Now, I didn't, if I go, there's a few other guys that I'll just kind of mention offhand, and I think they'll probably win like most improved player of the year award because their scoring average will go up the most, or they'll jump the most. Or they'll be thought of the most differently. So I think Anthony Simons, who's like ranked 92nd, could become, really their lead dog, playing off Scoot, a lot more room, be thought of as kind of a most improved player. Jaden McDaniels in Minnesota, I think, wants to do that. I just don't think there's any oxygen for him to do it. That would be because I think the oxygen's taken by everybody else on that roster. Somebody on the Spurs, whether it's Keldon Johnson or Devin Vassell, could make a nice jump because they have now the Victor Wembanyama on the floor, and there's a lot of room by which those guys are being taken. And so I think you could really see somebody there who ends up, getting a lot more points. Now, whether they get a lot better, I don't know. If you're going to jump from the numbers we're talking about, if you're going to jump from 45, or in the case of Wagner, 62, into the top 15 and top 10 or something of the nature we're talking about, you have to get a lot better, not just score more and do more. You have to get way, way, way better. I'll give you 3 guys who I actually think might go the other direction in the way people think about them. I'll just for the funness. Paulo Banchero's at 48. It's just way too high for a guy who shot below 40% in his final 40 games last year. Scotty Barnes is at 55, coming off a questionable year last year. You got to be able to shoot. And Fred VanVleet's at 51. I think those are way too high. So anyway, I think if I'm looking at players who might bounce this year in the league, I'm looking at that. And I think that's, I really think Lauri has the chance to not only make the jump I talked about yesterday, but just take them. Here are the players ahead of Lauri, and I think it's really reasonable that he's thought of as a better player than most of these guys by the end of the year. Okay, Karl-Anthony Towns, Jaren Jackson Jr., Trae Young, Jalen Brunson, Zion, that's an injury issue, Pascal Siakam, I think Lauri will be thought of being better, Domantas Sabonis, Tyrese Halliburton. He could have probably been in my group to jump. He's such a posh pick for that. I didn't do it. Jaylen Brown, Bam Adebayo. He's got to jump all these, frankly. Paul George, John Morant, Anthony Edwards. We're now at 6. Now we're at De'Aaron Fox. We're now at 15. Like Donovan's 16. That's what he would have to do. Does Lauri make that jump? What NBA player do you think makes the biggest jump? That's the YouTube question of the day. But I think Lauri not only makes the biggest jump we talked about yesterday for the Jazz, I think he makes one of the most important jumps of any player in the NBA. That's where I sit on what I think Lauri Markkanen is capable of doing for the Utah Jazz this year. All right. By the way, we had 2 players ranked in the top 100, Lauri at 31 and Walker at 90, and that was it. That's not a lot. We're talent ranking wise, we're talently deficient compared to some of the other teams in the NBA. All right. Could we be nice to Walker Kessler? Could we have a minor reality check maybe on where Walker Kessler sits in the pecking order of centers in the NBA? And then could we be nice to Walker Kessler? That's next as we continue, as we're just getting started here on Locked On Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by Jase Medical. This is actually a Utah-based company. Has some interesting, does some really, really interesting things, and can help you out in a lot of kind of ways that maybe you hadn't thought of before. So, kind of uncertain world out there, to say the least of things, and it leads to all sorts of different potential issues. Like, I have friends who live in the East Coast, and just from a weather standpoint, they talk about how, you live in these old towns in the East Coast, and the power lines are all above ground. And so then all of a sudden the storm comes in, you're 5 or 6 days without being able to get to the grocery store. You're 5 or 6. Well, if you need if you have medicine that's super important to you, that's a problem, right? Jase Case is what Jase Medical brings you. Jase Case is a personalized emergency medication kit that contains 5 antibiotics that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. You can customize your case and add additional life-saving medications based on your unique needs. Jase Medical now offers customizable for your Jase case with a dozen of add-on medications. Choose those medications that best fit you and your family's unique needs. Jase is continually working to expand their medication offers in those recent efforts, so they keep an eye on it. They keep going. You also might have somebody in your life who needs it, someone who lives in a place where this would be more important than you. You can do gift cards. You can buy a gift card for your family or loved one so that they can get a Jase case of their own. Be quite a gift. Go to jasemedical.com and enter the code Locked On at checkout for a $20 discount on your order. That's a promo code Locked On at jasemedical.com. You want to be in control of your own situation. Don't get caught unprepared. Empower yourself and those you care about with Jase Medical. That's Locked On at checkout for a $20 discount on your order. That promo code is Locked On at jasemedical.com. Thanks very much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. Greatly appreciate it. Jazz tonight against the Sacramento Kings. It is available on Jazz Plus, so make sure you get. Craig Bolerjack is back on the call, unless his flight in causes problems, but he's back on the call, so great to have Craig back. By the way, note on tonight, Sacramento played last night, so I'd be pretty surprised if we saw Sacramento's top guys. They played Golden State last night. I'm not sure why you'd play guys on a back-to-back in the preseason. And then we play Sacramento a week from now on our first opener, so I'm going to be super surprised if our 4 or 5 top guys go, right? Like, I'd be surprised if our vets go. I think it's a good opportunity to let Keontae and Walker play together. I think we'll see Taylor. I think we'll see Bryce. I think it's a good opportunity. And then the G League doesn't start for a little while, so there won't be a lot of minutes available for Taylor and Bryce here for a little while. So this is a good night for them to get some run. All right, so I was on KSL Sports Zone with Alex Curie and Scott Mitchell, and I got asked what was wrong with Walker Kessler, and I got to be honest, I was like stupefied. Like, nothing. Like, he's having a bad preseason. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't see that at all, which then made me wonder, like, what are we expecting out of him? And maybe it was just a question. And Alex and Scott, I'm not trying to criticize Alex and Scott. It's just, that was the question. And I literally was like, what? Like, where did that come from? Like, first of all, it's preseason. Okay? Second of all, like, this is like, do we need a reality check? And like, well, Walker was great last year. His rim defense is unbelievable. He was the second best rim defender of the final 41 games of the year. Nick Claxton killed him in a game last year, late in the year. Killed him. Like, he's still 20 years old, or 22, or 21. Like, he's Nikola Jokic and Rudy Gobert put him in the second row last year. Like, this is why Danny at the press conference last year was like, yeah, he hasn't really done anything yet. Like, Danny totally poured water on it. Like, Walker is an unbelievable draft pick. Was certainly in my mind actually probably should have been rookie of the year. Take it back. Oklahoma City should have. Jalen Williams should have been rookie of the year. But like, I almost think we forgot that he's developing over the summer. Like, I'm not trying to like I'm like all good, but like his last game, and I love Walker, but his last game, like if I remember correctly, Nick Claxton went like 9 of 10 from the field and had like 20 points. I'm sure it's like my memory probably goes the other way. It was probably like 4 or 5 and 10 points, but like that was his last game of the year. We were in Brooklyn and he got hammered. And he's great. He's going to be really, really, I don't know if he's great. He's going to be really, really good. And he had some mammoth days and he beat the crap out of Domantas Sabonis in a game last year. Like, yes, he had incredible flashes of being totally fabulous last year. But like, I'm a little like confused on where maybe I'm just overplaying like the question, but like I got this vibe that this was like real, like he'd hurt. So yeah, like he had a 31.11 rebound game against Sacramento last year that was freaking unbelievable and should excite all of us to the end of the earth of like what Walker Kessler is capable of doing, and probably exposes Domantas Sabonis of why Sacramento's 29th in the league defensively. He was awesome in that game. And then I think the next night he had like 6 points. Okay, probably not. He probably had 9 or he probably like, but like that's kind like I'm not looking it up right now. I'm just kind of like giving you the like gist. Like it's a huge developmental year for Walker, second year in the NBA. Like he said it himself, like the goal is night in and night out consistency. Ringer just did the top 100 centers in the NBA. Or top 100 players in the NBA. Now, there's a little, like, is Karl Anthony Towns a center with Rudy Gobert? Is Anthony Davis a center? Like, okay. Does Al Horford and Kristaps Porzingis both count? Walker came in 90th in the NBA, 90th best player in the NBA, which I think is, like, really, like, that's pretty good. Like, that's great. Like, I think that's a nice, fair, appropriate ranking. 21st on centers. And honestly, like Zubac of the Clippers is not on that list, who's really pretty good. Like there's some guys that actually aren't on that list that aren't good. Alfred Şengün is 97th and Steven Adams is 96. Like Alfred Şengün and Walker Kessler, like they're different, totally different. Steven Adams, like if I'm trying to win one game in the NBA tomorrow, I'm taking Steven Adams, not Walker Kessler, to be totally honest with you. If I'm developing a player for the future, I'm taking Walker Kessler 100 out of 100 times. I'm trying to win a game tomorrow. I'm taking Steven Adams. So, like, let's just give Walker a little space. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I can't count. 3, 7, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. 23 centers were ranked in the top 97 players in the NBA. Walker was ranked 90th. 23 out of the top 100 players. I didn't look, actually. I don't know who 98, 99, and 100 are, but I'm assuming they weren't centers, or so written them down. Like, that's like, so I don't know on how many nights that Walker goes on the court with like an advantage over the guy he's playing. And that's what the consistency of night in and night out performance we're talking about Walker with is. Like, let's be nice to Walker. He's awesome. I'm a huge fan, but like, it's hard. And so there's going to be nights where he probably is a bit overwhelmed or is still learning how to play these guys. Like, he's opening our year. Like, I'm just looking at it right now. Okay, I'm pulling this up. Sabonis, All-NBA. Zubac, massive. Okay, I think he's better than Yusuf Nurkic on the third game of the year. Yusuf Nurkic, to me, can't move anymore. Then we go to Denver, Nikola Jokic. Then he's got Steven Adams, if he's healthy. Okay, like, this is real. Play the Magic. It's probably better than whoever the Magic starting center is, who I can't think of right now. Then he's got Rudy. Then he's got Nikola Jokic. Then he's got Miles Turner. Then he's got Steven Adams. Then he's got DeAndre Ayton. Then he's got back-to-back games with Jokic, which is good. Then he's got Anthony Davis. Then he's got Ayton again. Then he's got Jonas Valanciunas, who he's ranked higher than, and Jonas Valanciunas is really good. Like Yusuf Nurkic and Jonas Valanciunas are two of the guys that aren't ranked in the top 100 that Walker's better than now. They're good. Like there are no nights off at that position in the NBA right now. Then he's got Steven Adams again. Then he's got Rudy again. Then he's got Ayton again. Then he's got Chet Holmgren. We'll see how that plays out. I'm forgetting who the Knicks center is right now. He's good, though, because the Knicks are deep. Right? Then he goes Jared Allen. Then he probably has to run around and follow Pascal Siakam if they're not playing a center. It's brutal. So, like, I don't know where that question came from, but let's be nice to Walker. All right, Eastern Conference predictions. Here are, and we'll dig into why. I'm going to start with my bottom 5 teams' offensive projections in the Eastern Conference. Okay, these are the teams based on points gained, which is how each individual on the roster uses their possessions, and then projecting how many possessions each is going to use, and then how the team ranks in points gained. For those who are new to this, we did the Western Conference 2 shows ago. We'll dig back in maybe a little bit tomorrow. And part 2 of that is, if you're new to this, is one of the things I look at is how many scoring opportunities every team has. And I think anytime you're over 120, you're going to have internal problems on who takes possessions, because once you're at 120, you have too many possessions and every player on the roster has to suddenly take 10% less, which seems like it's fine, except for most players don't want to. And once one player doesn't, now you're at 15 or 20%. In the Western Conference, the teams that actually I thought had a possession issue were the Phoenix Suns, despite the fact a lot of the guys they signed, everyone likes so much on their bench, are guys that use a lot of possessions, key to beats job, things like that. So it should be simple, easy that those guys don't want to, but that's not actually truly how it works. New Orleans is hovering around it. If Zion comes back at full throttle, all those other guys have gotten used to using possessions without Zion. New Orleans is going to be tight. Lakers are tight. Everyone got used to using possessions last year. They added a lot of players who use possessions. Clippers have 128. They're way too many injuries. And now when everyone's healthy, then suddenly guys don't get to get the ball anymore. That becomes a problem. In the Eastern Conference, Milwaukee's a problem. Milwaukee has the highest amount of scoring opportunities used on. So if you take all the players on their roster and how many scoring opportunities they use on average on a given season, kind of what they honestly expect out of themselves, and you push it out to like what they're going to do, they have way too many possessions. Dame's not taking less. Giannis is not taking less. Chris Middleton's not taking less. Like, I don't know how that's going to work. So Milwaukee red flags me that they have too many possessions on their roster and have to figure it out. So does Toronto, and ironically, so does Charlotte. When I rank the offensive teams in the Eastern Conference, my silly system somehow has the Milwaukee Bucks 7th on the Eastern Conference and 18th in the NBA with Dame Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo. How? Why? We'll explain that when we continue here on Locked On Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is the official sportsbook of Locked On. It's also the official sportsbook of the NFL. Of the NFL. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. Snap into action this NFL with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you've been thinking about FanDuel, there's no better time to get in the action. The app is so easy to use. A wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to kick off the NFL season. FanDuel is the official partner of the NFL. And if you look at the FanDuel Sportsbook for NFL this weekend, you can always bet against. Can you bet against Russell Wilson again this weekend? Or do they have a bye? Because it's just so fun to do. Jaguars at Saints. Saints are a 2-point favorite, despite how hot the Jaguars are. You can get into all sorts of fun things on that one. Also, betting the score, first touchdown score, Derek Carr props, things like that. You can also jump in on the Phillies and the Astros, Rangers, Phillies, D-backs if you want to as well. But the NFL weekend is ahead of you. All sorts of great ones. The Baltimore Ravens are favored over the Red Hot Lions. Really interesting weekend, actually, of games that are going on. The Raiders, 3-point favorite over the hapless Bears, and the Bills are an 8.5-point favorite over Bill Belichick on what is the biggest line of the week for those of you who are playing suicide polls. And the Niners are a 7-point favorite over Minnesota. I think that one is the late Sunday night game this week. It's all over at FanDuel, the official sports book of Locked On, as well as the official partner of the NFL. Let's get into it on the Eastern Conference. So the worst offensive team in the Eastern Conference, and for those why I'm only talking offense, because I really do not have a good metrics to figure out defense. The best way I figure out defense is kind of what have they averaged over the last 3 or 4 years as a roster and project it, and it comes out pretty well because defense doesn't shift a huge amount, but it's not brilliant. So Charlotte comes out as the worst offensive team in the Eastern Conference, not nearly as bad as the Rockets and the Spurs, so they're 28th in the NBA. Toronto comes out as the 14th ranked offense in the Eastern Conference and 27th in the NBA. The Wizards are the 13th ranked offense in the Eastern Conference and 26th in the NBA. Then Orlando. So for everybody who wants the Orlando jump, I don't see it. Here's my first big surprise. Atlanta, 11th offensively in the Eastern Conference, 23rd in the NBA. I honestly cannot see a Quinn Snyder offense be ranked 23rd in the league. I think that's seems impossible. But why? DeJounte Murray, using 19 scoring opportunities a night, is a minus 1.6. So that means he's minus 1.6 points compared to the average player. If average players combine to use those 19 scoring opportunities, DeJounte scores 1.6 points fewer than anyone else on the roster. Excuse me, anyone else, league average players. I didn't say that right. 19 scoring opportunities, average players distributed around him, they would score 1.6 more points than DeJounte does in those 19. Trae Young's a minus 0.5. DeAndre Hunter's a minus 0.5. Bogdan Bogdanovic is 0.1. Capella's a positive. Sadiq Bey's a minus 0.5. Jalen Johnson, who's going to play, is a minus 0.3. They do not have positive offensive players unless Quinn Snyder works magic there. Atlanta, to me, they lost John Collins, who's their one positive player. Brooklyn comes in 10th offensively, and a big surprise is Detroit. Detroit comes in 9th offensively, which I did not expect. I have a bigger surprise coming here in a minute. But and why does Detroit come in? Cade Cunningham's a minus 1.4. We'll see if he keeps, but Bojan Bogdanovic is a plus 1.6, and Jaden Ivey's a minus 1.6. Both those guys should get better. Second and third year in the NBA. And then all their bench guys are positive. Isaiah Stewart's even, Monty Morris is even, Jalen Duren's a plus 1, Wiseman's even, Alec Burks is a plus 4, even Marvin Bagley's positive. And you're going to see that having, even though we don't talk about it a lot, having a bench that's not negative is wildly important. This is what will happen to Milwaukee here in a second. Miami comes in 8th, and Milwaukee comes in as the 7th best offensive team in the Eastern Conference, 18th overall. You might think this is insane, but, and this has Dame having a fabulous year. Dame is a plus 3.1. Giannis is a plus 1.2. Brook Lopez is a plus 1.2. They're rolling. Except for Chris Middleton was a negative last year. Pat Connaughton is a negative 0.7. Malik Beasley's a minus 1.3. Bobby Portis is a minus 0.2. Cam Payne is their backup point guard, is a minus 1.4. Jay Crowder was even, but he's never been even in his career. And Marjan Beauchamp is a minus 0.6. This is my premise about the league. Negative offensive players are so much more detrimental than anyone realizes in this game right now. So that you can have Dame at a plus 3.1. And for those that are new to how points gained works, there's only 5 players in the league that are over 3. He's amazing. He was the 3rd best offensive player in the league last year. You can have Giannis at 1.2. You can have Brook at 1.2. Those are incredible. But you start taking minus 0.4 out of Middleton, minus 0.7 out of Connaughton. Those two guys right there take away Giannis. Malik Beasley, minus 1.3, takes away Brook Lopez. Bobby Portis, minus 0.2. Campaign, minus 1.4. Marjon Beauchamp, minus 0.6. That's just about eliminating Dame. Negative offensive players are so much more detrimental. Here's what gets crazy interesting to me about Milwaukee. So if Milwaukee is suddenly below average offensively, which they weren't great offensively last year, and they won a lot of close games last year. What they were great at last year was defense. You know what Dame's not great at? Defense. Like, what happens if Dame Lillard, who was on one of the 3 worst defensive teams in the NBA for each of the last 4 years, means that the number 4 offense on cleaning the glass, number 1 defense on cleaning the glass, number 1 on NBA in Milwaukee suddenly is not top 4 anymore, but is like 10 or 15. And Milwaukee, who was 13th in the league offensively last year, is now 18th in the league offensively. That's a 45, 46 win team. That would be a mammoth story in the NBA. So this could be crazy, but these are just numbers, and that's how it comes out. The Knicks are 6th. The stunner to me is that the Bulls were 5th. So why possibly would my system tell you that the Bulls are going to be better offensively than the Bucks, who have Dame Lillard? DeMar DeRozan's a 0.5. Zach LaVine's a 1.1. Nikola Vucevic is a 0.4. That's their lead guys. But here's their bench. Patrick Williams is a minus 0.1. Kobe White's even. Ayo Dosunmu's even. Javon Carter, who was on Milwaukee last year, is a minus 0.3. They just went from Javon Carter to minus 0.3 to like Malik Beasley to minus 1.3. Torrey Craig is a minus 0.3. Alex Caruso's an even. Andre Drummond's a plus 0.3. Their bench is just even, not minus 4 or 5 the way the Bucks is. It's a really big difference. And so suddenly Chicago comes out as the 5th best offensive team after being 24th in the league offensively last year. Chicago comes out as the 5th best offensive team and 15th overall. Indiana, surprisingly, 4th best offensive team in the Eastern Conference. The Eastern Conference numbers to me are wacky. But I try not to go back in through the numbers and change them. I just share with you what the numbers are. You can mock me when we're done. Tyrese Halliburton, 1.4. Miles Turner, 1.9. Benedict Mathurin, minus 0.3. Should get a little better. Buddy Hield, plus 0.8. Bruce Brown, minus 0.3. Obi Toppin, minus 0.3. Jerice Walker, if he plays, I'm projecting as a minus 0.7. I don't know he's actually going to play that much. Andrew Nebhart is a minus 1. That's a little bit of a problem. TJ McConnell, 0.1. Aaron Nesmith, 0.3. We'll see if they play Nebhart or Walker, if they suddenly go to Jalen Smith, Ben Shepherd, some of these other guys. But their top is good, and they just don't have that many guys sitting on negative. And they don't have a possession problem. That's the other one on Milwaukee. Milwaukee's got a possession problem. Cleveland is the 3rd best offense. Boston is the 2nd best. And this is weird, but assuming James Harden's going to play, which he's not, Philadelphia is the number 1 offense in the Eastern Conference. The other thing that's super interesting here is Philadelphia won't be the number 1, which means Boston is the number 1 offense in the Eastern Conference and Philadelphia isn't. And I have 7 Western Conference teams that are better offensively than Boston. Sacramento, Dallas, Phoenix, Lakers, Clippers, Nuggets, all Warriors, all are better offensively than Boston. This year could be really top-heavy one way or the other, the Western Conference being offensively minded. Cleveland at 10, then the Jazz I have as the 11th best offensive team in the NBA. And maybe 10th with Philadelphia out. Minnesota at 12, Pelicans at 13. We can play and put defensive metrics around it and try to make projections off this. But just to review, if you didn't hear the Western Conference, and you can go do it, Sacramento, who we play tonight, number 1 offensive team, Dallas 2, Phoenix 3, Lakers 4, Clippers 5, Denver 6, Warriors 7, Jazz 8, Minnesota 9, Pelicans 10, Blazers 11 as constructed, Memphis 12, Oklahoma City 13. To wrap up the East, Philly 1 as constructed, Boston 2, Cleveland 3, Pacers 4, weird, Bulls 5, weird, Knicks 6, Bucks 7, Heat 8, Detroit 9, Brooklyn 10, Atlanta 11, Magic 12, Wizards, Raptors, Hornets. See how it plays out. That is Locked On Jazz, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks very much for tuning in. Friday edition tomorrow. We'll probably do a little Ask LOJ as we wrap up the preseason tonight in Sacramento. Join me and Ron or subscribe to Jazz Plus as well. Have a great one.